Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to Newsfile. This certainly is your most authoritative news analysis show. And on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Today, 3 topical issues engaging our minds and all our attention this morning. Mensia hurting itself by angrily attending to roundedly discounted tabloid news that Otumfuo's court was suprema in the election petition. That is a question. We will talk about how to get the much talked about electoral reforms. Now, why can't Nana Addo end all the problems starting within the NPP over him by simply announcing right away that his political future will be A or B? We will find out if the threat of death is fake or fact. Do you believe it? That is the question, really. And then GNPC, drill ship scandal. The politicians are inviting us to join their blame game over alleged missing documents covering the sale. Is it documents we seek or the money? I'm talking about, importantly, the balance of $3.5 million. We'll be right back getting into the details.
Last 6 years, some not me company. Flag bearership contest, presidential election, constitutional reforms, flag bearership contest, a general election, listening tour, never be brave. 6 years ni to be na dos wo me ho kakra nti me fi say e bre na du na me so se me jima ho me kakra na me so me kwa dwundwe mu na me nyankopon so edi nkomo na me hwe de owo ma me kakra aka me ene na me kan ye ma aba be ya asam kese wo kan na fi say me kan sanso a na me kuma mo asam na me ka enche me tu kwan kakra na busumi ni ana bibisa kakra akoye sa adwendwe no na metie de onyankopon so be ka kire na nso no me koi nsema maka wa hano no enye bibia metumi aka so me bogu e bi mpanyifo pa ne mo mu suntina ye de ye se kwan bia so adwendwe bia be ba me ho no Central Region and then some of our Bekawano at the Kamupa.
Now that it has become so clear that the issue of overvoting, no verification, no vote, as well as no signature of presiding officers are no longer relevant, I call on all party supporters to make it a point that December 7, 2016 will be decided at the polling station. We must all prepare, since our destiny will be in our own hands. We will certainly need someone who could inspire us, and this will be no other person than Nana Addo Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
They have developed a lot of confidence in him, and by his recent demonstration, they have acknowledged his peace-loving nature and his leadership of even taking this matter to court to establish the loopholes in our electoral systems and so on, to be exposing all this. So if you have a leader who has already marketed himself through this opportunity, then why would you throw him aside and look for a new person to build his image? So every member of the party who cares for, power and the running of the political administration of the country feels that he's a good candidate to follow.
Issues are being raised about electoral reform, and I'm happy that the chairman has put his considerable weight behind the call for electoral reform and that of your body. Clearly, we need to examine from the beginning, even the methodology. The institution that has to be reformed, is it the proper body to lead the process of of reform, or perhaps it may be better for us to have an outside body look at the issues and be able to give us an independent assessment of what the needs are, having listened to the views of as broad a section of our people as possible. These are matters that are on the table, and I think it is important that at the very beginning, all you who are eminent citizens in this country whose voices go far, pronounce yourself on some of these matters, because it will help the process of reform itself and make it a more credible exercise. At the end of the day, if we have credible elections, we will have peace in Ghana. And that is what we want, a credible system, method of appointing the electoral commissioners, the way that they work, the actual technical details of the these are all what have got to go into the mix of electoral reform in our country.
Of the grave, malicious and vicious falsehood contained in the publication, calculated to castigate the honor and dignity of Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, the Asante Hene. The Standing Committee resolved to convene an Asanteman Council meeting on Thursday, 19 September 2013, to decide on the next appropriate action.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, and we are coming to you live from the Multi-TV studios. This is your Joy News channel. You're listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra and on over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. And if you're watching us in the UK or elsewhere in Europe, this is the ABN television channel. And you are also watching us, of course, on multi-TV/streams and listening again on myjoyonline.com. The show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of MTN Everywhere You Go, Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. Lipton Tea, inspiration flowing from nature. Valex Lease Equipments, your affordable document management solutions. And of course, I am clothed by Latida. Welcome. Your views, comments, questions, opinions are welcome. 1422. 1422. You can also send them to, post them on our Facebook wall, or your comments can also come to us through Newsfile at myjoyonline.com. Newsfile at myjoyonline.com. Thank you very much. My guests are seated, and as I announced to you today, we are looking at the most topical matters that have come up, very vexed issues, and we'll get into the details of them. Why should Nana Addo not announce right and now that he's interested or he's not interested to end all the speculation which is leading to alleged fighting within the party? Well, he's got his right to determine how he does that, but should he do that now? There is also the scandal about the GNPC drill ship. Where is the money? Nasikano wehi. The politicians are inviting us to their game of the blame game. It is blame Chachu. Someone says blame the NPP. They lost the documents. So there's something fishy about the whole transaction. Question, where is that money? The balance, especially $3.5 million. Where is it? And obviously, very finally, we are also looking at the calls for reforms. Will they come anytime soon when there are suspicions about how the EC could go about it? My guest, regular panelist Abdul Malik Kwekubaku Jr., editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Ni Ayikwe Otu. He is a lawyer, former attorney general. Abraham Amaliba, he also regular as far as the election petition is concerned on this platform. He speaks for the NDC legal team that was in courts. And Mahama Ayaraga, he is the Honorable Minister in charge of the Information Ministry and Media Relations. He's also a lawyer. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great. We start very firstly with the matters regarding the Menchia Palace. It appears that the new Free Press online, which I'm actually learning for the first time, knows better than all of us, and they have information that the Menchia Court, which is presided over by Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II, appears to be supremer than the Supreme Court as far as the election petition is concerned, and that he had a hand in the verdict. The question we're asking this morning is whether or not Menchia has overreacted to the news. 15 sub-chiefs held a press conference to denounce what had happened. Kesbin FM, a local radio station in Kumasi, which attempted a review of the new Free Press online, got attacked. And there are now various other groups coming up in defense of the Menchia Palace. Is the Menchia Palace better off ignoring what is going on? I'll start with you, Mr. Ikotu. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you. We are still talking about aftermath of the judgment.
That is so.
Before then, we were talking about peace. The question now is whether with these kind of allegations, we are not going to endanger the peace once again. The right to free speech is something that media men hold in very high esteem. And most of them believe that they have a right to say what they want to publish. Some of us have been cautioning that the rights go with responsibilities, and you've got to look at people's reputations as well. Now, if you go making such a serious allegation about the Asante Ine and his council, that he was behind some bribery and corruption, that is quite a very serious matter. Because if you are not able to sustain it, and you have these fertile minds of our people down there who may believe anything and everything coming from the press. I remember when we were young, when you ask for evidence of some story, they say, it is in the graphic. It is in the graphic. You didn't read the graphic. As if whatever is contained in a printout, it's the truth, without even trying to find out who wrote what was his basis for saying what he has said. But the fact that it's been published in the Free Press, or is it free what? What do you call it? New States
Free Press.
New Free Press.
New
Online.
Free Press, You don't, somebody might say that once it is published, therefore it is the truth. So I think that Menchia had acted properly. First of all, coming to react to it, because it is said that when something bad is said about you and you don't react, the implication is that perhaps you've accepted it. So by coming out to react to it, it shows that they are not happy with what has happened.
But there are times also that silence actually means protest. It's not
Yes, but especially when it's in the printout, the little political communication I have learned is that so long as the thing is not true, never leave it out there. You've got to come out and try and say your say, so that at least there will be two views out there for the general public to think about it. But if you just say that, well, I'm just going to ignore it, as I did to my imperial when I was Attorney General, you say things I won't mind you, because I'm not going to talk to the press. It's a very dangerous, strategy to adopt. So if you're a politician, or even if you are not a politician, once something is said about you which is not true, you have the right of rejoinder. In fact, the Constitution even provides for that you can always come out with the right of rejoinder. And I think what they have done is proper. They've even gone further to report to the National Media Commission, to bring these people to book. The problem there, you and I know that when Kweku Baku and Kwesi Pratt were invited, they refused to go. We took the matter. I was a lawyer for a National Media Commission, as I said, because I was not talking to the press. Nobody knew. But I took it to court. We went and tested it. And as Samuel said, where the language used does not appear to be compelling enough. So the question is, assuming these people are asked to appear before the commission and they said they won't go,
where would it end? That is why people are saying that if Asante feels so strongly about this thing, he can't even go to court.
Right.
So it's not a matter of just leaving them.
Especially if it's so setting, and it appears that is what the palace's posture. That they are so setting that everything that's been churned out is pure lies.
Pure lies.
So they can't back it.
No, he needs to, salvage his image because that thing has gone out and it's already there.
Mr. Heka, it appears that you may have adopted this attitude of not wanting to get into the media over every allegation that is made about your government or about your ministry. For a short while now, you have taken a kind of a back seat as far as, driving issues concerning the states and your role as a minister is concerned. Is that the posture you would have liked for the Menchia Palace to take?
Well, thank you very much. And it's not true that as Minister for Information, I will not respond to any issue that has to do with the government. I think basically it's a question of strategy.
All right.
You need to determine who speaks on what issue. The fact that you haven't heard my voice doesn't mean that you will not hear the truth being put out there. And you will not hear the truth being put out by a more credible voice than myself or anybody directly in government. But it is important at all times that the truth should go out, and it should go out through a more authentic voice and from a more authentic and credible establishment. And that for me is the way that we approach getting the facts out there for people to know. And in this particular instance, I think that we might as well spend so much time discussing the response of Menchia to the issue. But that doesn't deal with what the underlying issue is. In my opinion, and I think that it is very important that we very often reflect on the underlying cause of the problem and not just the symptoms of it. When you take the Menchia case, what does it tell us? And it is my opinion that it tells us something very sad about ourselves. And this has been long happening in our body politic. The last time I was with His Excellency the President at the ECOWAS Summit, and then the interim president of, I think, is it Mali? Mali, they just held their elections. The interim president of Mali was saying, we're asking, I mean, the heads of state wanted to find out from him, well, will they accept the results and etc. if the elections, and he said that the problem we have in Africa is that we have Democrats who don't believe in losing elections. We have Democrats who don't believe in losing elections. They will do anything, and so he was hoping that his country would not go through that process. There's been a very systematic effort, is that okay, to undermine institutions. And unfortunately, people have forgotten and have even tried to now undermine an institution that is so sacred to all of us. I mean, if you observe the trajectory since this case started, almost everybody who has been involved one way or the other, there's been some attempt to try as much as possible to destroy the credibility of institutions. I mean, take our Electoral Commission. Look at the history of this Electoral Commission. Look at how this Electoral Commission is held highly across the continent and worldwide, and how our commissioner is indeed the resource person on the continent when it comes to election matters. Just look at how systematically there's been efforts and investments in trying to destroy the image of this fine man who, in spite of all the odds, has worked with all of us to build an institution that we've all depended on one time or the other.
You're not suggesting that he should not be criticized when he does well.
Yeah, now I'm coming. Then it went to the Supreme Court. And again, look at how people tried to destroy the reputations of individual judges on the bench. I mean, across all sides. I'm not just talking about one particular political group the other. It's like across all sides. Then after the ruling, we've carried it very far, and now we're trying to destroy such a sacred institution such as Mansha, and trying to drag them into this petition, and to try and create an impression that even the verdict that was given was perverse because it was obtained through bribery by Otumfuo. Apart from the fact that that does colossal damage to the reputation of the Supreme Court itself that handed down the decision, it also definitely destroys the reputation of the Otumfuo and Mansha, which is, a traditional institution that everybody, respects and is revered across the country. And if you understand the standing of Otumfuo in the politics of this country, I can assure you that when everything else fails, frankly speaking, when all our formal institutions fail in holding this democracy, very often it is the traditional authorities that hold it together. Not just in Mansha, but in the various regions and in the various district assemblies and etc. They often block things and then make sure that they protect our systems. And so I think that this attitude of we must win every contest, we must win every contest, whether it's a political contest, a legal contest, whether it's an economic argument, whether it is in parliament, and if we lose it there, we must discredit the institution that has given it, is the attitude that we must change. That is the attitude that we must change. Otherwise, tomorrow it will move from Otumfuo to some other institution, and then it will be the churches, and then, even the churches had their bit of it during this trial. At a certain point, leading, religious figures were lambasted and attacked, and very often people had to come to their defense. And not just this, but even during the main election itself. Let's be frank. Is that okay? So I say across all sides. So I think that that's the attitude that, excuse me, that's the attitude that we must deal with now.
All right. Now, Abdul Malik, what's your take on the issue, first of all?
Yes, a quick one first. Mr. Ayiku to recalled the fact that Kweku Baku and Kwesi
refused to go.
Refused to go. Fact. It's a fact. We went to court as he himself indicated. Indeed, it has slipped my memory that he was the lawyer on the other side. The truth of the matter is that the NMC lost the case, so we won. And the truth of the matter too is that it's on record that the National Media Commission has praised me and the new Crusading Guide, then the Crusading Guide, for being one of the papers and editors who cooperated with the commission many times. Won cases, lost cases. Those that I lost, we offered the appropriate remedy in terms of apologies and things. This is documented in one of the NMC's books for their compilation. So it's there.
Okay.
This instance, Mrs. Rawlings, there was an allegation of some monies against that had been stashed in the Swiss bank in the name of Mrs. Rawlings. Mrs. Rawlings threatened to go to court. We accepted the challenge, only to turn around that she was going to the Media Commission. And I made a point that I would prefer to meet her in court. And that was the basis on which I refused that particular invitation by the NMC. So these are the records. Now, back to the issue. Ordinarily, to be honest, I would have ignored this particular publication, particularly because it comes under a cloak of a certain anonymity.
Right.
This particular newspaper used to come out in a hard copy form, and then it was irregular. Then suddenly just vanished from the media landscape in terms of the newsstands. And then now I realize it's supposed to be on online. There's still a certain quasi-anonymity about it. You're not very sure who is behind it, who is the editor, who is not the editor. So there's a little problem there. And I had seen those publications on social media. It was very pervasive on social media. And my attitude was to ignore it. There were a lot of people who were commenting. I did 2 or 3 comments by saying that, look, this cannot be something we should dignify. So that would have been my attitude. But since Otumfuo has reacted, and what is more, proceeded to the National Media Commission, they've made the issue a legitimate target for discussions. So I think we are within our rights to deal with this discussion in an open manner. Otherwise, sometimes some of these allegations, when you give it some oxygen, you are also doing some damage too. And you know what? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm getting my brother Ayariga wrong. I'm not too sure that it would be fair to seek to link this particular attack on Otumfuo's integrity and personality to the election petition directly, in the sense of wanting to source it to people who might have lost a petition or an election.
But I was waiting to react to
Yes, I think we have to be very careful. If we draw that line, or linkage rather, we may also be creating an unfair situation for the petitioners and those who went to court to deal with the issue. Okay? So I'm not about to agree that there is a certain connection. If there is, the connection is outside the framework of the petitioners and those who were motivated to go to court to challenge, or those who lost the election. Okay, this is the way I think we should.
But to the general public, that will be a legitimate perception.
But we are here to interrogate the issue and to actually show the general public that whatever linkage is there is mischievous. I haven't said my brother committed mischief. I haven't said that. Okay. But that's the important point. Otherwise, we can't just leave things that way.
All right.
And you see, Otumfuo, and I think I have to be also a bit balanced here. Otumfuo, it's not the first time he's been a target of such allegations. There was a time there was a certain subtle attempt to cocainize him. You remember?
MV Benjamin.
In the wake of the MV Benjamin.
Yeah.
In the case of state lands, there have been such subtle attempts. Indeed, on this very show, there was a spirited attempt using a certain name, Nana Kwekudua, and claiming that same because that is his name pre-assumption of the thing. Yeah. So we have had that situation where people have sought, not just the Otumfuo, even the Ochinhene, Galamsey, there were attempts to link him to it. We've had that subculture, not just attacking traditional rulers, attacking politicians, attacking presidents, attacking public servants and things. I'm not against the attack if it can be backed
by evidence,
by something of evidential value. That's the point. But if cannot be, and especially when it is coming under cover of anonymity or some wicked speculation, then we might as well let it rest. So for me, one, it's interesting that he chose the Media Commission. That shows somebody with a big heart. You understand? There's a more moderate solution there. So I'm not too worried. I'm happy. That's my instinct. I would prefer that approach quite often. So that's fair. But we are told the police are also investigating. Yeah, they are really entering an uncharted territory. How to locate that paper online, it's a challenge, but it may be useful because there are a lot of people who think that you can put anything on social media and get away with it. There are people who think that there are no laws even that can trap you within the context of social media. So whilst I am an unrepentant advocate of free speech, free expression, I prefer, as I said, in a tight situation, ugly noises to a culture of silence. I mean, in a tight situation, if you have to make a choice, I think it's about time those on social media who put things out there unchallenged, unchained, should begin to think this thing is about time it stops. As my brother said, it even affects the justice system.
Right.
It's not just Otumfuo in this case. So it's a very serious thing. I am not speaking as if I have not committed any errors before, but I think that we are all growing and it gets to a stage when the thing is bad, you have to admit it's bad. And we look for a cure.
And when I returned from Ms. Aiko to the question I'll be asking you guys again will be, what should be the media's own work before it goes to republicize, certain publications in terms of the laws of libel? So what should be the due diligence that should accompany? Because this media house apparently found that this was a harmless thing. It had already been published, and they thought that they could review it. Absolutely. And Mr. Bako's reference to MV Benjamin and the palace's link at that time to the missing 77 parcels of cocaine. reminds me, I got publicly reprimanded right at the Mencha Palace for daring to discuss the issue on radio when a fiat silently had been issued against it. And some will say that the palace's attitude to be silent, secretive, sometimes also is what hurts them. Ebi, what do you say?
Let me start by saying that this statement coming from the Free Press is the most scandalous and contemptuous statement of the Supreme Court yet. It is not only an insult to Otumfuo, but it's also contemptuous of the Supreme Court in the sense that it seeks to impugn on the integrity of the judges. That is to say, they have no mind of their own, and that they cannot deliver justice or deliver a verdict without being influenced. And so when you look at it from that angle, you see how serious the issue is. Question is, should Manshia have kept silent? There are some allegations, when they are leveled against you, you are better off reacting immediately. So suppose you were walking in the Makola market and a lady just approaches you and says, "You raped me yesterday." That's not the kind of allegation you should just keep quiet and be walking while she follows you and saying that you raped me yesterday. You must instantly prove your innocence. So that's the kind of situation that Manshia finds itself. And so I think that the reaction of Manshia is accurate, proportionate, and I think that the steps they have taken is in the right direction.
Sometimes doesn't it matter, you politicians would know this better, doesn't it matter where the information is coming from? There are certain media houses that may take on government or a politician and you decide to ignore it because that media house doesn't really carry any weight.
Yes, but sometimes you do that at your own peril as a government because then you don't know, you've not done any research to know how it has fed into the public psyche. So you do so at your own peril. And so you are better off placing people at vantage points to immediately dispel such notion. Else, you don't know how it can become cancerous. And so for me, you see, when attempts were made to link these statements to maybe the opposition element, it's not, you can only draw some correlation because this statement is coming just immediately. There was a statement from AFAC, which is predominantly an opposition group, demanding the resignation of Dr. Afarijan.
This came long before then.
No, I don't think so.
To be honest, on social media?
No, I don't think so.
The free press
so.
online?
In any case, no, this statement of saying that Manshia was bribed is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Manshia bribed the judiciary,
yes.
is what I'm talking about.
It was there before the AFAC statement.
So once there is that closeness of time, let me say, okay, closeness of time, you cannot but just simply say that, look, it is an attempt to further discredit institutions of state, institutions, traditional institutions, because a certain verdict did not go in their favor. But I don't think that we should draw that conclusion yet. What I think is that as a people, we should condemn such pronouncement as we have done here. Again, it is also clear that once it is contemptuous, and I think the judges will determine that, if they feel so scandalized, they should crack the whip. The Attorney General can file a writ of attachment if you are able to pinpoint who is the author of this message. The Manshia should go further. There are laws of defamation. If it feels defamed, they can still go further to, as it were, bring an action in court. But this, for me, is a clear indication of how, as a people, we have the lunatics who are found on the fringes and who would not like to have this democracy go the way we all want it to go. How do we deal with such people? They are few in the society, but we shouldn't gloss over them. Let's deal with them. Let's ensure that the laws work and deal with such people.
Mr. Ekoti, someone would ask that, are we not getting too harsh? First of all, in the manner in which the condemnation has come, because almost everybody is condemning roundly.
Yes, because if there is no evidence out there and somebody decides to put up such a serious allegation, against the palace, I mean, just like any other person, I mean, you would not feel happy, especially so when we are talking about the Mansha Palace and the Otumfo.
People have made allegations, very wild allegations against government, individual politicians. They have not received such, widespread condemnation for what they have done.
I agree
without
with
proof.
You. I agree with you. Perhaps we are looking at managing the peace after the petition, the judgment, and therefore one is a little bit more careful in trying to, look at a more civil way of doing things, because Nana Addo has led the way by the way he accepted the judgment and calling upon his people to, also accept it and just work with the government. There will be other times, perhaps in the near future, when those who are now hurt may then become, be ready to also jubilate. That's why I said that when my brother said, win every contest and win every, I noted it because I realized that he was trying to, dig into the whole thing and bring in other people, especially the MPP and the petitioners, which I thought was unnecessary. We needed to immediately react to it because assuming Nana said, I'm not going to accept this verdict, what would have happened to this country? Because even when he said so, people were condemning him that he had spoken too early and all that.
But there are those who also suggest that if anybody had attempted that, the security would have come very hard on them.
It depends. I mean, security, we have had security elsewhere. As my friend said the other time, in Sierra Leone, didn't we have security? In Liberia, did we have security? We had security, and all those things could still happen. So he's been rightly commended. So I think that in the context that there was a petition, there was a judgment, and somebody had to accept it or say, I don't accept it, and he accepted it and led to peace, then these other ugly noises lead to, rather unfortunate situations, which ought to be nipped in the bud. And that is why perhaps the condemnation has been
right. To the other question by way of advice that I was seeking, that what do you say to the press generally, the media generally? Because sometimes there are those who think that for as long as it's been published by a newspaper,
they are also going
I can
to
go
run
ahead and review it.
I still commend to them the Report versus Liberty Press. That judgment, looked at the freedom of the press, it looked at the role of the press, and he won that repeating libelous or contemptuous matters would be no defense to say that I didn't start it. It is all there. They should just go and read it. Who is giving publicity to the thing? Nobody would have heard about it. But you started it, and now look at what is happening, So the Liberty Press case, when they want to know where their freedom ends, what to do with press freedom in terms of pending actions and repeating libelous and contempt, they should just go and read Liberty Press. My worry, and I keep on saying, is that, I see a trend where you see media men who would be using the press for a period in their own life. The gentleman has completed school. He doesn't know what to do. He thinks he can go to the press. He can speak good English. So he joins, he becomes a journalist. He's not gone to the Institute of Journalism and he's not been properly trained. After some time, you hear, Samson Lade Ayanini is now a lawyer. He's left the field altogether. Perhaps he didn't even go to GIJ at all, but he practiced the journalism for a long time from a practical point of view, and later on he decided that, look, I'm even going to become a lawyer. Now, I chip in this one, that if you go to the school and maybe you are trained, perhaps some of these, cases would have been brought to your attention. Some of these media problems, what do you call it? The libels and the contempts and the rest, your attention might have been drawn to it. But if you have not had the benefit, and you don't have the experience of Kwekubaku, to wade through some of these, minefields and landfills, you may run into difficulty.
That's interesting, but some will tell you that you will be surprised to find that the worst culprits will be those who have
The trained
received
people.
the training. Now, Mr. Aga, you had
It's
a
possible.
quick
There's
reaction,
always
and then in addition
the
to
other
that,
side
I want
to
you
it.
to address the issue of the approach of the media in such situations.
Well, I mean, I think it is important for us to get back to what, for me, we often run away from, which is some attitudes, some approaches to our own politicking that often drives these type of things. I mean, it is true that we don't have any evidence linking the article to any particular petitioner. Is that okay? I believe also that there are so many statements that have been made throughout this trial and post the trial that we can't link directly to any petitioner or respondents. But you can tell that it is being presented in a way to support a certain cause, a certain message that is being put out there. And even during the trial, the judges had cause to take certain steps to try and then stem the tide when it was becoming very characteristic of the behavior of some of us political leaders. I mean, I recall when I think Bernard Mona and co went to the Supreme Court, got their ruling. After that, some very senior politicians and people with legal backgrounds wrote articles and expressed some views about the decision and the court and what they believe was the motivation of the court and etc. And I'm saying that if you take all these things and piece them together,
You are referring to the suggestions then that it was the NDC that had actually paid Bernard Mona to go and do what he did. We also heard when Ramadan went, there were others who said it's the NPP actually Gabios Asarachi who was funding him to do that.
Yes, so if you piece all that together, you will see that on both sides, and I'm being very fair here. I mean, and I said that we need to look across political divide and not just be one-sided about it. There's a general attitude of we must always win, you see, and we need to deal fundamentally with that. If we deal fundamentally with that, many of these problems, because many of these minor actors, like you said, this is a newspaper nobody knows and etc. I haven't even seen the publication myself because it was immediately withdrawn, and all of us are struggling to find where it is to see the original publication. We're not finding it. But I'm saying that these things are given oxygen by the posturing of some of us at the highest level. And then that gives them the indication that if they do this, they'll be supporting one cause or the other. And so we at our level of leadership must give signals that will let people appreciate. Like he said, yes, Nana Akufo-Addo came out, accepted the ruling. But even when he accepted, I recall that subsequently, there were people, leading members of the party, who said that's his individual opinion, and that they were still waiting for the decision of the court to now look at it and decide whether or not his approach to the situation was right or not. I publicly commended him for what he did. So yes, individual leaders are making efforts so that we can deal with these attitudes, but we must admit that it still remains fundamentally a problem. And going forward in building our democracy, I think we must really try and build that culture of accepting when you have lost, accepting when an institution takes a decision and it's not favorable to you. Otherwise, we will keep on destroying the integrity of every institution. And I recall reading this book, A Man for All Seasons, when the key character was told about cutting all the trees in the forest in order to get to a particular person, because that's what the king wanted. And he said, if you keep cutting all the trees just to get to this person, when you have finished cutting the trees and there's a storm and it comes, you yourself, what will protect you? You need those trees. So if you cut the law to get to a particular person, when you finish getting the person and they come for you, then you will need the laws to protect you, and the laws will not be there. And that's what I'm saying. Our institutions, we can be critical of them when they need be, but we must be measured in the ways that we criticize them. In terms of jurisprudence, and I have my very learned senior here, there are approaches to criticizing Supreme Court decisions. I mean, when the decision is over, academics sit, study it, and then try. And then there's a language, a refined language in which you criticize the decision, just for law students to appreciate that maybe in future, if they have the opportunity, they shouldn't decide the way that this particular judge decided. And that is accepted in terms of legal discourse.
Now, maybe you two, you have the benefit of being a lawyer.
But then there was something you asked,
all of them
you
give the
asked about
advice.
the approach of the media in situations like that.
I thought that in your comments, you seem to have addressed it partly.
Okay.
Unless there's something very central you want to say.
I
Yes.
think it's
Let me hear you on that one. For you have suggested earlier that if the Menchia Palace felt so strongly about it, they should resort to the court. Kweku and Mr. Aiku to think that it's all right for them to have adopted the posture of not wanting to immediately, as it were, come down on them that hard.
No, my position is that if Menchia feels strongly that it has been defamed in this matter, and I'm talking about the laws of defamation, libel, and scandal, if they have been scandalized,
exactly,
they should adopt the attitude of going to court and then having their name cleared. Now, it wouldn't just end there. It will lead to sanitizing the media in terms of having Menchia being dealt with leniently and fairly in matters of this nature. You notice that Kokobako chronicle events where Menchia has been mentioned. Now, is it time for Menchia to stamp his authority and crack the whip and say enough is enough? If Menchia feels that, look, we are tired, we have been brought into public ridicule, can we, as a matter of fact, let this be the last straw which would compel us to go to court and ensure that we bring this matter to closure?
You don't think that generally the media is conscious of defamation when it goes about reviewing newspapers, for example?
A few of them have. A few of them are professional. Some throw caution to the wind. And most of the time, you find statements being made on radio stations, and you wonder whether we have laws in this country that can nip this thing in the bud. So we should not just go home to sleep and say that, oh, media men are doing well. But the few ones, I've always said that even if there's one bad nut, it's one too many. Let's ensure that we uproot that bad nut out of the system. So I do not think that we should just go to sleep. We should constantly look out for these bad ones and ensure that we deal with them.
All right. Now, Abdul Malik, with all the experience, behind you as an editor, what would be your advice to the media generally in how it approaches, especially the radio and TV, how they approach newspaper reviews?
Well, I'll be surprised. I'll tell you, I was damn surprised when I heard that this particular publication had been subjected to a radio program discussion. I was shocked because the first time I saw it, I said, my goodness, this is a landmine. And since you cannot even locate the editor or the paper, on what basis are you going to discuss it? Usually, the format is that you call the editor or reporter responsible for the publication, interrogate him on the issues before you may call the other sides to come on board. So on what basis did they begin this discussion? On something you cannot, locate into. I was shocked, I'll be honest with you. But let's be fair, we've improved. Look, 1992 to 95, the kind of journalism we practiced was no joke. It was a reaction to the system too, where we were coming from, And so we called it, we pushed. We just asked questions. The free press was the best in those days, and I'm talking of the real free press. We posed questions. We did provocative things to bring out something from the system. There's been much improvement. It's not fair sometimes to isolate, mention names. But look, there's no way Kwame Sefakai, and I'm saying this, would discuss that on his show. No way.
Right.
Randy Abbey, no way. There are few others like that. I'm sorry I haven't mentioned all names. I'm finding it difficult mentioning these two names because I don't think it's fair to those I don't mention. Your show, you're here, this station, City FM, Radio Gold, people don't sometimes have negative views about them. I have been a very careful listener of that station for many, many years. I have thousands of their recordings. This kind of thing will not be brought on board for immediate discussion. Let's be fair. Give the devil his name. Yes, they won't. I mean, I know they have done certain things you will not appreciate. The same with one or two other stations. Okay? So to be honest with you, it comes not just out of experience, but also a certain sense of caution. You understand that who am I going to talk to on this story? And you do a background investigation first, even before it comes on air. So you would have had contacts with the editor, the managers of the publication. They would have given you something. And if you thought that thing could be used, then you can proceed to deal with. Otherwise, Mr. Ikuto has made it clear there are laws. Right. There are also precedents that should guide all of us. I don't want to sound as a hypocrite. Once upon a time in my career as a journalist, I've done serious things, grave mistakes, some of which created problems for me. There's one story I've always said that up to today I'm ashamed, eternally ashamed for putting that story out. And I was dragged before the Media Commission. This story was about Mrs. Rawlings. Indeed, not about her mother, who was not a public figure. And if I tell you where that story came from, you will run. You understand? It came from a very highly placed source in the system itself. And foolishly, I went to town. And it was a disaster. Kunedu's family secrets out. It was such a disaster of a story. I was dragged before the Media Commission. I was proved wrong, and I came out and offered an apology. As I said, up to today, I'm ashamed. And you see, it's the totality of those experiences that have built a certain caution in us. I don't want to sound as a hypocrite. Kesben, they've apologized. That's so. I will take the apology in good faith, and I think it's also a lesson for them.
What should Menchia be doing even after it has submitted a complaint to the NMC? There are people, all sorts of groups that are coming out in defense of Menchia, holding press conferences. And interestingly, the linkage to the 77 parcels, you had a group that held a press conference addressed by one gentleman who was connected with the 77 parcels, matter. How should Menchia, go about this?
Menchia has lodged a complaint with Media Commission. I think they should keep their focus there. I don't know if they complain to the police as well, but even with that complaint, the police could still on their own, so moto, activate investigations. Let us keep focus. Those who, in defending Menchia, are also trying to use unorthodox and illegal methods must also be cautioned. They are equally guilty. You cannot defend the integrity of the Otumfuo and the palace by going out there to actually settle scores on your own. That would be lawlessness.
See. Your Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM, and this is TV on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. Thank you very much for staying with us. Newsfile, we put Ghana first, and the show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of MTN everywhere you go, Bank of Africa, Valex Lease Equipment, and Lipton Tea, which is giving us, energizing us to, bring you the show this morning so that we don't look dull. Right now, you are aware that the Electoral Commission has put out some advertisements inviting proposals for reforms on the back of the Supreme Court judgment on the election petition. I'm sure you are aware also that the NPP, through its national chairman, Jacob Echebi-Lamte, has reacted. They have suspicions about having the EC play the lead role in the reform process. On this note, I start with you, Mr. Ikuto, again. Why is the NPP, and through its national chairman, having problems with the EC leading the process of reforms? We have had Kofi Annan suggest that we need the reforms. We have had the EU government also suggest that they are willing to support the country in the process financially. And almost everybody says, let's look at reforms. Justice Atubuga gave us what he thought should be looked at. Justice Doche also did the same thing. What is the problem?
Well, unfortunately, it is the same Mr. Justice Doche who appeared to have lambasted Dr. Afarijan, saying that it cut a
He
very
appeared
low
or he did?
fever. He did. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That he appeared to have, that he lambasted him and saying he had cut a low figure of himself, and in his view, he should have looked at the way presiding officers were recruited, because when you have a situation where presiding officers are class illiterates and they did not understand, what to put down on the pink sheet and all that, and all these things were, took place under his supervision. Now the duplicate serial numbers and the rest, although we had 9-0, almost all of them appear to be saying that indeed there was something wrong with the way the pink sheets were printed, and the fact that you even had, 2 sets that were ordered for the elections, and it was unnecessary, the finger of God thing and all that, So if you look at the way the guy had come under attack, then it becomes problematic for the MPP for the same person to lead the reforms. But that is where they are coming from. We are educating the public, and therefore I always say that whilst I belong to a party, I would like to share my own thoughts on matters. That is why I'm here. Apart from maybe representing the party, I should have my own thoughts. The Electoral Commission is an independent body. That is why IPAC has no legal basis. IPAC has been brought about by the Electoral Commission. Now look, let's all of us come together to judge about the way forward. Now the issue is, are we now going to give it a tit to bite? How do we craft it in such a way that any law backing IPAC will be consistent with the independence of the judiciary? Those provisions as provided for under the Constitution. So important, because if they go against it, then you can get somebody, trying to get the Supreme Court to strike it down as being unconstitutional. So now we are also told, we know from the Constitution that Dr. Farijan has the status of a Court of Appeal judge, and therefore he retires at the age of 70. It is automatic. I'm not aware of any commissioner who had been given an extension of time after his or her time had become due. You go automatically, you leave at the age of 65, Safo Kantanka, the others, Kanga and Solomons, all of them left. Those who are of the High Court, which is 65, they left. This gentleman is going 70. So it cannot be forced out. It will be left for him to decide to resign if indeed he wants to resign. But he has that tenure of office which is protected under the Constitution. Now,
so those who are making all the calls are speaking out of ignorance.
I won't go that far.
They are not getting guidance.
Exactly. I have always said that we should make use of our institutions. If you have an institution within your body politic, your organization, and you think that where you have reached, you need to seek advice, because they are experts in that particular area, one would have thought that these things would have been done. I've said that if somebody wants to make use of me, I'm available. If you want to go and do your own thing, fine. But me, looking at the constitutional provisions, he has a tenure of office. He retires at the age of 70. He's now 68 or 69. We are told he has some time. Assuming he refuses to resign, what will happen? Wouldn't we still look at the reforms? Well, we need to do the reforms. So we need to think, find a way forward in looking at the reforms that almost all the justices spoke about. And as I said, I'll repeat it, even the 9-0, they didn't say that it ought not to have come there. No, they are saying that there was no evidence to support those things, and that the EC must have to look at it again. So the reforms are necessary. Those who have not taken part in actual elections are unaware that indeed these recruitments are done by returning officers, and they are heavily influenced. I've said it over some of these radio stations and TV stations since this thing came up. You find people will be selected. They will go through training, and they expect to be given the accreditation to go and man polling stations. The night to the election, they will change all of them. And say, I am the EC, I'm independent. We have decided that we are changing the list. And you know who they put there. And your guess will be as good as mine. Maybe I can't say it on radio or TV. But things go on. That at the end of the day, these so-called untrained, crass illiterates go to man the place, and they know where their bread is buttered.
You have been aware. You've been part of the podcast
I have gone
system.
through it.
I've heard about some complaints. I've heard about some complaints in this regard.
Yes,
but you don't appear to have done much about it.
Because of the independence, the semi-independence of the the EC, sometimes, and it happens so late. I'm saying the night before, they go and change the list and bring you another list, and they don the vest and go and stand there and say they are EC officials. Meanwhile, they are party colors. You can identify them. And this is the person who will decide what your polling agent can do. Now we are talking about the rule that ought to be given to polling agents.
Mr. Ikotu, you are saying that you are aware of such a situation happening in the example that you give, very bad example that you gave, but you say that you are disabled because you cannot complain about it?
Yes, because look, we do complain. The EC is sitting somewhere, he's dealing with 26,000 polling stations. It cannot be everywhere. That is the meaning of you and I were not there. That is the meaning of you and I were not there. It could not be anywhere, everywhere. And you have returning officers who are sworn to do the work according to the rules. Last minute, they do other things. They do other things. So we need these reforms, and we should not hide behind any attacks that have been, directed at the man. Let us get our loins together. Let's be ready to look at the reforms and see the way forward. And because if he says I'm not going to resign, are you going to say you won't work with him? And if he sets all the ground rules before he exits, because he's got to go, I think, before the next elections, but he still has time. He sets all the ground rules which will be inimical to you. Would it be okay for you to go and work with those rules? So we have to rethink.
But can he really do that?
Why? He's the chairman. He still has control. That's why he's put up the advert that you come, give me what you think what we need for reforms.
But we have not known the EC to act outside of the IPAC in recent times.
Well, because of what had happened, we have now gone to court, and we heard people have called for reforms, including, as you rightly pointed out, Kofi Annan and the rest. Is he a member of the IPAC? Kofi Annan is not a member of the IPAC. He's also calling for
Malik, to be fair to Jacob Echebe-Lamte, he is not calling for the EC to be sacked or to be forced to resign. He's saying that we cannot trust the EC to superintend the process of the reform.
Very interesting. Did we go or did we come? Post-92 elections, when we began to talk of the need for reforms, one of the key issues that came up was the issue of the composition of the EC. This is minutes of the EC's meeting with the political parties. The first meeting, which was in February 1994. And I'll just read some portions. It says, issues that emerged during the exchanges were summed up as follows. A, objections to the membership of the Electoral Commission, its chairman, and the composition of the commission at the regional, district, and polling station levels. This is one of the items. B was suggesting for a review of the voters' register. C, provision of ID cards with photographs. D, provision of transparent ballot boxes. Then F was review of aspects of the political parties law and the regulations on elections. And the last one was the need for broad electoral reforms. But we're back again, post-2012 elections, to the issue of trust, confidence in who minds the EC. That's why I asked the question, whether we really have traveled that far. The answer has been provided by Mr. Ikwotu in terms of the legal effect of the call for the exit of the EC chairman. And I made a similar case Wednesday on the Kukrokro. It's a futile call. Perhaps just for propagandist effect. He wouldn't go unless he chooses to, voluntarily, and not because you are asking him to go. So why waste your time chasing a mirage? That's my candid opinion. And he's made it clear, if you think he's done something wrong, activate the Constitution, where the procedures that lead to the dealing of a Court of Appeal judge are relevant in this case, if you check the Constitution. So if people are serious, let them proceed in that direction. Then you are making a meaningful input. Otherwise, forget it. And let's focus on the other areas that we can. And I'm not one of those who thinks that the EC, because of what has happened, cannot be part of the reform exercise or cannot lead it. Indeed, post-92, in spite of all the suspicions and mistrust in the EC, circumstances compelled all of us together with them to proceed in the direction of reform. The same thing is going to happen. There's not the luxury of an alternative. I've heard people say, oh, then forget the reforms. We'll go to the polling stations and replicate all the mistakes or violations that the Supreme Court proceedings brought to the fore. That's a mindless option, which should not be operationalized in a law-governed society. So what we should do is to look at the issues that have arisen, the pin sheets. The Supreme Court itself indicated the difficulty, the challenge that comes with it.
It says that it ought to be streamlined. It's a bit too elaborate.
Yes, so that's a legitimate thing we should look at as a nation and proceed to deal with it in that sense. That's how we should do. Drive this reform with a certain sense of responsibility and urgency, of course. Procurement practices, the procurement system of the EC, and in this case, I'm looking at how the things were printed and the fact that the printer was at liberty to put his own numbers on. The court commented on that.
That is so.
It makes no sense. We cannot let it continue. So there's a point there. You know, the non-signature, for me, is a critical area of a presiding officer. Before even the verdict, we had agreed here that was a challenge. And if you read the verdict, they are making the point that it devastated them seriously.
Yeah.
So it's a real problem. Some of them are not exactly electoral reform. Some even border on the constitutional amendments. So there's a whole array of things we have to be looking at. Some that are electoral reforms per se, which can be dealt with within the context of the EC interacting with the political parties, and this time around perhaps civil society and the rest. Look, the donor community have been part and parcel of our electoral reforms drive. I have the documents here to show, all the minutes. But for them, we may not even have been able to actually effect some of those reforms. And there's no constitutional basis for their participation.
Right.
But we allowed it as a convention. So this time around, I'm beginning to see a certain involvement of some civil society good governance groups, just apart from the political parties. The creation of constituencies, when and how. Demarcation of boundaries, when and how. Let's take the opportunity this court, that the court case has offered us to proceed further, re-engineer the electoral system, bring in more confidence and integrity. There are many things to do. The IPAC itself, we should look at it. If you look way back, this is a minutes dated May 12, 1994. It's IPAC meeting. Future role of the Inter-Party Advisory Committee. Says 1, the meeting stressed unequivocally that the committee had come to stay. It was also agreed that the committee should meet once a month, that is, say, the last Thursday of every month. The next meeting is scheduled for 30th June 1994. And then it was agreed that the general secretaries of the parties should be ex-officio members of the committee. The very first meeting, this is what they said, the first meeting with the Electoral Commission was an introductory one. It stressed on the meeting's role as an advisory body to the Electoral Commission. This is how many years gone? 1994. Here we are, 2013, post 2012 election. we are back to dealing with what should be the status of the IPAC. Mr. Ikwotu made it clear there will be a constitutional challenge because of the entrenched, guaranteed independence of the EC. So how do we formulate a legislation to empower IPAC that will not undermine the independence of the EC? I think we are thinking people. We've got creative minds in this country. There's a way, a manner we can go about dealing with some of these things, particularly in terms of procurement and other areas. We can enhance their role because already the procurement committee of the EC has representation from the parties, one from the major party in parliament and the other, the minority side in parliament, as well as I think one person from the Ministry of Finance or so. So it means that there is an avenue for enhancing non-EC involvement. I hope I'm understood by what I mean by that. In some of these things that created problems for us at 2012 elections, completely based on the proceedings of the Supreme Court. We could see, it was a live show, and we all could see certain things that happened. Finally, you see, Dr. Farijan is a good friend of mine, so perhaps there's a certain instinctive urge to be biased. I think he's done his lot. We should display a sense of proportion and moderation when we are judging people like that. There's no doubt that the Supreme Court proceedings undermined a certain level of his integrity. There's no doubt. Particularly the last day, the 17 pin sheets that they brought on their own was a disaster, in my candid opinion. But overall, the man has contributed his quota, and we ought not to bastardize him at the tail end of his career. That's my view.
Thank you very much, Abdul Malik. Ibrahim Sapo sends in this message from Yapi, and he says the EC chair has shown beyond reasonable doubts in recent times that he's incompetent, that the 2010 elections, district assembly elections, and the 2012 election and all of that, the EC cannot be trusted in handling the electoral reforms. All right, so he rather proposes a separate commission to supervise that process. There are those who disagree with you completely on that one. I'm supposed to take a break right here. When we are back, we'll hear from the minister and also Abraham Amaliba. But there's also a question that I'm asked to get Mahama Yarga to address on the question of regulation in terms of online media. It has come up time and again, and government has indicated at certain points that there is some, consideration of same. We'll return and look at that and get into the other matters as well. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. Now, get a head start in life towards your dream job. Be part of MTN's career fair on Thursday, the 26th of September at the National Theatre from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. sharp. Come receive free guidance and counseling tips on how to write compelling CVs to land that dream job, how to prepare for interviews and win loads of MTN airtime and souvenirs. Just send yes to MTN short code 1397 to receive a link and follow the steps to register. Alternatively, you can simply log on to MTN. You can log on to careerfair.mtn.com.gh and forward your CV to MTN Career Fair, giving you a head start in your career. Welcome to the world of possibilities. Now, if you're also looking for a slightly used car or even a brand new car, and I'm talking about cars in, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, Infiniti, Range Rover, you name them, Errata Motors is the place to go. They have brand new and slightly used cars that you would love to have. And they are located right at Lagos Avenue at East Legon. Call them 0244 445 268, 0244 445 268 or 0277 486 800, 0277 486 800, and get the best vehicles deals that you could ever get in town. Errata Motors, the best vehicles at the best prices. Now, I come to you, Ms. Ayaga. First, there's a question for you to address the issue of regulation, because that is what this Menchia matter raises, very central.
I mean, I think we've been having this discussion about regulation of the media for some time now. There are two things. What are you talking about? Are you talking about regulating the content of what journalists say, which really is censorship? Or are you regulating the platform on which they publicize what they say? And these are two different things. In this particular case, it was published electronically. So that is, for me, not really the issue. The issue is not the platform they use to publish. The issue is the fact that the content of the publication raises some issues. As for the platform, we now have a number of legislation that deal with electronic communication. Since we passed the Electronic Communications Act, it sets out the framework for communicating electronically and some regulations. We have an Electronic Transactions Act also in 2008, which also deals with, transactions that are carried out electronically and how all that is regulated. So there is some regulation in the area. And the real issue in this instance is not the platform. The real issue is the content of what you say. And given the freedom...
But after we have identified the content and come to the conclusion that the content is defamatory or it is libelous, we need to get someone to let them, face the music.
No, absolutely. I think there are rules that determine how we gather the evidence, which evidence is admissible and what is not admissible. And the Electronic Communications Act clearly makes these communications also admissible in court as evidence of communication and publicization by anybody that publishes using these electronic platforms. So I don't think that there's really an absence of regulation when it comes to those things. And it is a question of technology, really. I mean, do we have the technology to prove that this was published by Mr. X? I think those are evidential rules, really, and the extent to which we have the capability technologically to adduce the evidence to establish that, yes, Mr. X really did publish it. But even here, I don't think there is a problem, because I listened to the Ashanti Regional, I think, president of the GJA or regional chairman of the GJA, and in a sense, they know the journalists who did it. I think so, because I heard them saying that they are talking to their members and etc. So I don't think there's really an issue of knowing who.
I suppose that was
it.
in reference to the journalists who sat on radio and reviewed the story.
Okay, but I assume, because Kweku has mentioned the fact that this paper has been around, just that they no longer publish hard copies, so they've gone electronic. So we know the newspaper. It's not as if we don't know the newspaper.
I get the drift
and we
now.
know the editor, and we know those who are involved. And so establishing who did it is not really the main issue now. So I think that there's some regulation in the area, and that shouldn't be a problem. The key issue is not the platform. Key issue is the content of what you put out. And there again, the National Media Commission, by our constitutional provision, is the right body to regulate issues of content and to determine when there is a complaint, how to ensure that people whose reputations are damaged as a result of these publications get some form of remedy. And I think that Manshia has duly initiated the processes for seeking remedy. Now, on the broader issues of the Electoral Commission.
The aspect of social media is very frightening, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it is. But then, as I indicated, it is more a question of technology and how you deal with the legal processes for detecting who actually put out what. And then how that gets admitted in court
All right.
as evidence. I think that there's no doubt that the courts will admit it as evidence. The issue is the person bringing the action having the capacity technologically to prove that Mr. X, against whom I am in court, is actually the person who put it out there. And I think that's a function of our own investments in infrastructure. But you see, there are service providers, because you can't just go on the net unless you're going through a particular service provider. And those service providers have the capacity very often to go through their system and establish who actually put what there. So that also, I believe, can be addressed. It might just make litigation more expensive and more difficult for ordinary people who may not have the resources to be able to bring such major players to court and then get them to be able to help them.
You can move on
establish
and address the question of the call for reforms.
Well, as for that, I hate to go back to what I have diagnosed as the fundamental problem. But once again, we are dealing with another major institution and the reputation of that institution and what they have been doing. I was a candidate in the 2004 parliamentary elections. I was also a candidate in the 2008 parliamentary elections. And I was a candidate also in the 2012 parliamentary elections.
On 2 occasions you won, yeah?
Yeah, on 2 occasions I won. 1 occasion I lost. So I can say that I know our electoral system from a more practical, experience with it than just a theoretical analysis of the laws and etc.
All right.
And I feel very saddened when I listen to the discussions about this last election. Because this was an election in which, frankly speaking, I was not the least worried at all about the prospect of anybody engaging in a malpractice that will undermine my victory should the people decide that I should be their representative. Indeed, at a certain point, I even sent signals to my polling agents that it wasn't really that necessary for them to be at the polling station monitoring the process, but they should concentrate on getting the voters out to vote. Because the reforms that had taken place had guaranteed the removal of certain practices that used to undermine the credibility of our elections, for which several people wrote books, and etc. I mean, this time it was almost impossible for anyone to engage in double registration. And that was the major challenge with our elections. The fact that people could register several times, one person with 5 voter ID cards, and on election day he would find a way of voting 5 times. I mean, there was hardly much that you could do to prevent that, especially in strongholds of the different political parties. And it happened across political divide. It's not just one political party. All the political parties, frankly speaking, when they had the opportunity, did it. This time, everybody had 1 vote. The worst part of it was that vote was even going to be verified. And if you're in the queue, you can't tell who is going to vote NDC, who is going to vote MPP. So the verification applied across board to everybody. There was a challenge with the machines, all right, on that day. But then the Electoral Commission, for the first time, I believe, in our history, since I started getting involved in voting, extended it to the 2nd day, so that we had 2 days of voting. And the process went on smoothly. For the first time, you are here as a journalist. You recall previous elections. Most of the time, you spend your time drawing attention to polling stations where people were struggling to lift ballot boxes and run away, where there were allegations of stuffing of ballot boxes, where macho men were parading at polling stations. This last election, did you hear any reports about people going to polling stations, macho men trying to snatch ballot boxes and this and that? Because they themselves had realized that given the reforms that had taken place, all those things became unnecessary because you didn't have to do that. Because the system was such that you had just one vote. So even if you snatch a ballot box, where were you going to get ballot papers to staff? And because of the one man, one vote, and the fact that the system was guaranteeing that, I mean, the numbers were known and the communities came out and voted peacefully and etc. I think that the Electoral Commission did marvelously well.
It must be said, though, that there were instances of overvoting, right?
I mean, frankly speaking, we've looked at the judgment, we followed the proceedings. No,
I'm talking about instances
human,
where the EC itself had to annul the votes.
No human institution can be perfect. Is that okay? There will be mistakes here and there. And he mentioned 20-something thousand polling stations across the country. 26,000. It's not that easy. So there will be one or two mistakes here and there. But I think this last election, I mean, clearly, Afari-Gyan, working with all the political parties, because throughout the life of the Electoral Commission, they have worked with the political parties. He mentioned IPAC, not a constitutional body, not even a legislative body, is that okay? But then they have established a working relationship in which they discuss reforms that are needed, they come to some consensus, and then they go ahead. Even if the reform is not provided for by law, they go ahead and work together to implement it, if that is what will make all the parties confident and participate in the process. And Afari-Gyan is the person who has led this process, but he's not been alone. It is not just the commissioner, it is a commission. And the commission has several members. And as members, I mean, I believe internally they decide democratically which way to go, or based on
but
some
there have been
consensus.
times his word has been law.
Not law per se. I mean, internally, I mean, the fact is that if you are a commissioner, within the institution, you establish a certain mode of operation. The fact that I announce the decision doesn't mean that it's not the decision of the group. I mean, I don't recall an instance when he has said something that a member of the commission has come out publicly to say, no, at the commission meeting, that was not what we agreed on. I don't recall. Maybe there are such instances, but I don't recall. If we had instances where individual commissioners came out of the meeting and said, no, what Afari-Gyan has said doesn't reflect the agreement at the last commission sitting, then you can say Afari-Gyan is acting ultra-virus, is acting in ways that does not reflect.
So you don't have a problem with him leading the reform now?
The fact is that he has always worked with the political parties to carry out reforms. This is not the first time we are reforming our electoral system, starting from opaque ballot boxes to transparent ballot boxes to now having biometric registration and ID cards and having it verified biometrically and etc. These are reforms that have been going on. And so this is not the first time we're having reforms. Indeed, the institution's history has largely been one of carrying out reforms based on consensus by all the political actors that they have been working with. And at this stage, you look at the Supreme Court decision and the views of individual judges regarding some of the things that must happen. And I've heard colleagues on this panel also amplify some of those challenges. It's true, some of those things, there may be the need to change them. Some of them, in my opinion, are simple administrative matters. For instance, the issue of procurement. I mean, you don't need the Supreme Court, to tell you about how the procurement should take place and etc. There are procurement laws. I mean, what do they say and etc. But even there, the Electoral Commission,
the Justice Atuguba says that the voters' register must be compiled and made available to the parties as early as possible. And then he talks about a supplementary register also being made available to cater for exigencies. That is administrative purely.
Those are administrative, and I have been a candidate, and I know that sometimes, you get the register late. But then, if you really observe the practice, you will see clearly that the Electoral Commission indeed has done very well in terms of transparency and involving the political parties. For instance, printing of the ballot papers. I mean, parties are informed which contractor is printing which ballot papers, where he's printing them. They go and sit there and observe the process. When they finish, the safety of the ballot papers, the transportation of the ballot papers to the regions, from the regions to the constituencies. When they arrive, we the candidates, we have our representatives. They go and sit in the office of the Electoral Commission and watch over the ballot papers. When the ballot papers are being dispatched from the Electoral Commission office to the polling stations, they follow, they are there, they are given the serial numbers, they check everything. I mean, they do quite an elaborate work. And if you realize that an election is the biggest organizational challenge after war, is that okay? You can understand the enormity of the challenge. Elections, it is the biggest act of mobilization after war. And in their case, it is usually very difficult because it is happening in the entire country the same day, the same time, from morning till evening, and everything must be coordinated at 23,000 points across the country, across streams, across mountains, you know, in
maybe including the reforms, we should be looking at organizing it region by region so that it can concentrate its efforts one day at a time.
It is a huge organizational challenge. If you're a candidate, you feel it on that day. It's a huge organizational challenge. And so I think that they have done very well.
All right.
These administrative matters, yes, we all observe the Supreme Court proceedings. We all could sense where they themselves, you know, felt challenged and made concessions, and hope that in those areas they themselves will take a cue from what happened and then also look at it. But then, you see, as usual, they are starting from the major actors by saying, bring us proposals. You observe the proceedings. Some of you went to court. Some of you were there in court because you were dragged there. But whatever the case, you participated and you have a sense of the challenges. Bring us proposals. How does the issue of the resignation of Afarijan come into the picture? I mean, all these previous reforms that he led, what happened? Reforms that he led, an MPP won elections and we all accepted their victory and lived under them until NDC also won, and the issue is, you know, accepting the victory of the NDC. Afarijan was there, he was a driver. Why do we think today that he is no longer qualified to lead the reforms and he must resign before we will accept the reform? And that brings me back to the key issue of the fact that when we do that, we are not really, it's not Afarijan that you are destroying. You are destroying the whole institution. That's the Electoral Commission, because as I said, it is a commission. It is not a commissioner. It is an Electoral Commission, and there are other actors. He is the leader. But it doesn't mean that if there's a problem, I mean, he should be the one that everybody should hold responsible. It's a commission, joint responsibility.
Okay, thank you. In a minute?
Yes. You know, he's painted a rosy picture, and I don't think it is very fair to Ghanaians and even to the petitioners. For example, the C3, you know, the question was simple. How many people voted without biometric verification? According to Dr. Afarijan, that question ought not to have been answered.
Exactly.
But that question was answered.
He said that entry was in error.
Yes, but no, it was answered to show that people voted without biometric verification. And some of the judges, like Ms. Owusu, said that the evidence was there and nobody contradicted it. So she was prepared to accept that people voted without biometric. Again, when it came to the journalists, people who were treated as special, so they could vote the day before, and the following day could observe and advise, were forced to go and vote that same day. Did you have time to observe and now report? So we were not getting reports on some of the things happening, like elections starting in my area at 12 and 1 o'clock. How many people reported? From 7 o'clock, we started elections at 12 and 1.
All right.
We had to close at midnight. Okay. You know, so now, it's not that simple. I mean, the Supreme Court judges have made it clear that we had problems with this election, and we've got to look at reforms.
Now, let me just respond. You see, that as a candidate, you've stood elections, I believe, also. As a candidate, look, sometimes you get a call in the morning from some staff of the Electoral Commission that he is the officer in charge of a polling station that is in this village. Is that okay? And the polling station is supposed to be a particular tree. If they have chopped off the tree, there's a problem. He can't locate the tree.
Yeah.
So they go home in the whole village trying to locate. No, but the election didn't take place only in Accra. No, but the election didn't take place in Accra. Is that okay? I mean, what I'm talking about is that the fact that there was delay up to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, can be just a simple issue of transportation, how to even get to the location, And we experienced it. And sometimes, look, the Electoral Commission staff depend
But
on
you
even
agree
the
that
vehicles.
ought not happen.
The vehicles of the political
It has
parties
to be
on that day
avoided.
to be able.
If they are supposed to
an
report,
exceptional
they are
7
supposed to
o'clock.
report at 7. They ought to be there at 7. There
Yes,
should not be any.
but my argument is that
They need to vote in the afternoon.
my argument is that
voted in
when
the
you
afternoon.
have such a massive activity
Mobilization.
taking place, 23 different locations in the whole of Ghana at the same time, contemporaneously, not at different times, so that you can move resources here, finish, and move resources there. At the same time, you must admit of certain minor lapses. When we raise these lapses to a point where we are seeking to undermine the entire activity,
That
we
is
create
where you
problem
have
for
a problem.
institutions.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, while some hazards arise next to no time, our protection comes even faster. At Star Assurance, our passion is to offer you cutting-edge insurance policies that give you peace of mind and the power to achieve your set goals. We work to protect your properties and businesses when the expected and unexpected happens. You are assured of prompt claims payment and superior customer service. Our policies include burglary bonds, fire and allied perils, motor insurance, travel insurance, among others, contractors all risks policy, and many more. With branches all over Ghana, we are focused on building partnership that lasts a lifetime. Talk to Star Assurance now on 0302 240 632. That is 0302 240 632, or visit their website www.starassurance.com. Celebrating 28 years of solid partnership, Star Assurance, your partner and your solid partner. Now, let me bring you some of your messages. Samuel Bryan Boabing writes from Awoshi Samson. The electoral system in Africa, and for that matter, Ghana, has lost its integrity as far as credible, free and fair elections are concerned. The same EC workers saddled with nothing but absolute corruption, secrecy and highly incompetent electoral reforms with this same crop of leadership is like waiting for a ship at the airport. Is absolutely irrelevant. Bonti Benjamin says, elsewhere, Dr. Afarijan and his deputies would have resigned after they failed to give us value for money in the 2012 elections and not to think about reforms. Ghana deserves extremely better, if not the best. Al Hassan says, I agree perfectly with Mr. Otu. People were trained on the night before the election, but those people were changed the following morning. The returning officers need to be cautioned seriously to refrain from that attitude. Spike sends this one from Ohio in the USA. Samson, the media landscape in Ghana need to be purged. Anybody at all calls themselves journalists and continue to malign and vilify innocent citizens. Okay, he says that ought to be checked. Well, if there are people who are going about maligning people and they do not have the right journalistic standards, the courts are there, and I believe in the courts. Just take them on. Now, is it Shaka? He's sending this from Somea. He says that why should anybody want to link this new free press publication to NPP? I think this is bad. Mr. Ayarga should do analysis devoid of attack on political opponents. Thank you very much for those messages. Keep them coming in. 1422 is the text line. You can post them on our Facebook wall, or you can send them by message to email newsfile@myjoyonline.com, or better still, you can also post them on our Facebook wall. Now, Abi, you have your say on the questioning of electoral reforms.
Something, if the word reform is used to mean improving upon our electoral system or making it better, I'm all out for it. But if it is laced with calls such as Afarijan should resign, he cannot lead the process, I vehemently disagree with them.
And your basis is?
My basis is that, indeed, the Supreme Court upheld what Afarijan did. That's what the Supreme Court did. Upheld it.
You want to say largely?
Look, There's no largely. Supreme Court speaks. There's no largely. Supreme Court speaks by majority.
You've won or you've lost.
You either win or you lose. Supreme Court speaks. No, not largely. Supreme Court speaks. No. Supreme Court.
Read the lead judgment on the majority side by Justice Atuguba.
And what did he say?
And he says, admittedly, then he goes on to talk about some of the infractions that occurred, but comes down to the point that you cannot raise them to the level that the petitioners are seeking.
We have not said that there are no imperfections in our electoral system. Nobody has said
But that's the focus here.
Look, from day one, respondents have said that there were technical errors, administrative errors. Imperfections in our electoral system cannot be avoided.
Okay.
But that's what we are focusing on here, not the overall effect of the verdict.
The verdict has vindicated Afarijan. Yes. Look, there are a few people who want to go to the market and have Afarijan and the EC scandalized, and to the extent that because they have lost the elections, now their guns are now targeted at undermining the institution. That is wrong. That for me will not work, because there are laws governing these electoral processes and Afarijan himself. They mentioned Justice Doche lashing out at Afarijan. That's just one judge. And so if that were an issue, it would have been 8-1. Just as how we got 9-0, 9-0, 9-0 against them. So I do not think that the issue has to do with Afarijan.
Do you also agree that some of the judges, after reading their brother's judgments, will defer from making certain comments which they agree someone has already made them?
But if they felt strongly on an issue, they would have repeated it.
Okay.
So
they don't need to.
the issue is not about Afarijan, neither is it about the commission. The issue is about improving upon our electoral processes. And the biggest room in this world is a room of improvement. Indeed, if we are able to chalk some successes in reforming this process in 2016, I will tell you, in the next election, after 2016, we will need reforms. It's not going to end, as if these reforms that we are calling will end all problems. I do not think so. So the calls are unfounded. They are not geared towards improving the electoral system. They are just mischievous, trying to run down the institution. Look, the EC, our electoral process, is one of the best in the continent, if not even in the world. Look, you have party representatives from polling stations, coalition centers, even strong rooms where they are not supposed to be there. They are there. Declaration of results is done publicly. In countries, they will collect the results, go to a small room, count it, and come and tell you people that this is what the results are. We have an electoral commission that has steered affairs in such a way that it has 10 results or given verdict to different political parties. In some countries, the election commission, as if it is formed to just declare one person president every 4 years. You know that. It becomes monotonous. And I wonder what the commissioners will be doing, whether they enjoy their work.
In some countries, they are interior minister.
Yeah, who organizes that? So I think that rather than going on that tangent to try to scandalize the EC, I do not think that that is the best way. Look, the EC itself, after the elections, and every 4 years it does this, it goes round, the EC itself, goes round to meet political parties' representatives. It started doing it until the MPP pulled a stop on it and said that because the matter is in the EC, Supreme Court, they are not going to participate. Then the EC withdrew the process. Every 4 years after the election, it goes from region to region, and they divide these regions among themselves. Afarijan will be in charge of the number of regions, the second deputy, then the third deputy, and they go to collect views. This is not to say that what the justices are saying is not right. I just want us to distinguish between genuine calls for electoral reform from mischievous calls for electoral reforms. People who think that things must be done in their way, and if not done in their way, that is not reforms. We can still achieve the much needed reforms with Afarijan in there. He's proven that he can do it. Look, did Afarijan, I'm not talking about the signatures, presiding officer not sign. Was it Afarijan who gave an order that presiding officer shouldn't sign? He wasn't the one. So how do you say that he cannot be trusted to steer affairs when it comes to reforms. There are no basis for that. And I think that as a political party, we need to even reform ourselves so as to take advantage of the reforms that we are calling for. Because look, if we reform the electoral process and you stay behind and you don't reform your own party, you can't benefit from the reform. So rather than focusing on the Electoral Commission, we should also do an internal self-assessment and reform ourselves so that we can better position ourselves to take advantage.
You are setting. Who is this advice going for?
You are setting.
Who does the cafe?
Who is it?
Who does the cafe?
Who is this advice going for?
Why? Is it the case of when dry bones are mentioned, all of this have become on this?
Say it. You are
I'm talking about political parties taking political parties. Political parties. I'm saying political parties.
I've heard
you advise.
Political parties.
I've heard you several times say that you're available to offer advice and nobody's listening.
So they say nobody is listening.
The NDC, let me tell you something. We in the NDC, even though we've won this matter, we're not going to sleep. We still need to understand why 3 judges voted the way they voted. We need to understand and appreciate it and do things in such a way. We're not going to be complacent and say, oh, 5454 9090. We will do an internal self-assessment.
Are you setting that? Are you setting AB that if you were
we just needed a draw with Zambia.
If you were in opposition, if you were in opposition, yes, you would not have had any problem with an EC boss who has suffered some amount of indictment to lead the process.
Who indicted him? The Supreme Court has not indicted him. I'm telling you that the Supreme Court has rather vindicated. What did he do for the petitions to go to court? He declared President John Dramani Mahama president. That is the reason why they went to court. The Supreme Court said what? He was validly elected. This is a person who must be praising. It's a person who must be praising.
I see. What's the point about Mr. Ayaga?
No, I was going to.
You were raising your
hand.
Yes,
you see, we must look at the entire history, the sequence of events, and understand the motivation. I mean, I will say this. I mean, and I believe that you can take me on my word. When Electoral Commission declares results, and you take the whole country through 8 months of the kind of experience that we went through, at the end of the day, you have to justify to Ghanaians that it was worth it. So for me, all this hyping of reform, and attack on Afarijan, I see it really as an attempt to justify what happened. The fact of going to court itself, to show that something came out of going to court. Otherwise, really, I'm saying that I was a candidate. And I'm saying that nothing wrong happened in this election.
I see.
I mean, it was the best ever in the history of Ghana. The best election. Anybody
I
can
thought
challenge anybody as a candidate.
Your statement was rather about the gravity or the extent to which you can call some irregularities that occurred, but not to seek to label it perfect.
For instance, take the issue about not signing. In fact, it was after the case started that as a lawyer, I started having second thoughts about that provision being a constitutional provision. From a very practical point of view, you can't have it stated in a constitution that at every polling station, when the results are declared, the officer must sign, the representative of political parties present must also all sign, and etc. And then use the word shall. And that is in an entrenched provision of a constitution, which has very rigorous amendment procedures.
You have a problem with that?
I have a problem with that because from a very practical point of view,
okay.
And I'm saying practical because, as I said, I've been a candidate several times. Okay. From a very practical point of view, it is good that you have evidence of the endorsement of what has happened there by the officer of the Electoral Commission at the place, but to elevate that to a constitutional provision, an entrenched constitutional provision, creates problems.
You just haven't thought about it. You haven't just thought about it. Do you know that it is this primary record which will be sent to the collation center? And even when there is a problem with that primary record, it will reflect in the strong room.
But you see,
your point in a minute.
So if for instance, you know what it does? Do you know what it does?
Yes.
In the next election, I bet you, I have been a candidate several times, and I'm telling you this. the next election. And I'm saying this because, I mean, my constituency, everybody knows, and the difficulties that we have there. On several occasions, I've had to beg military officers to move into a particular area and take out a party representative because the person feels that there was something wrong with the results that have been declared and says he will not sign. And everybody there knows that his not signing raises question about the legitimacy of that result, and then that endangers the life of that person.
No, but the EC has always, the EC boss has always said that your signing does not invalidate the process.
No, but you see, it's in the Constitution that he should sign, and that if they are representatives of the political party. No, I'm not talking about the decision of the judge.
Is also very clear about that the non-signing of the presiding officer is of no any effect.
Yes, I agree.
Not the presiding officer, the polling agent.
Yes, but
that's downplaying the role of the polling agent.
Oh yes,
that is not so.
What role has he got?
They have given him roles in the Constitution.
You read Doche.
Okay, just a minute. We need to move on.
So the point that I'm making is that yes, as we all go through this process, we see where there are some mistakes. For instance, even in the Constitution, there are issues there.
Yes.
And the administrative issues, there are challenges there. But I'm saying that is not
perfect.
That should not be the basis for the kind of trouble that we went through for 8 months.
My last one.
And the Electoral Commission.
Well, his last submission is helping his case a bit. But otherwise, I was going to say that it appears my brother was not embarrassed at all with what happened with the 17 piece sheets, the final day.
All right.
He wasn't embarrassed. It was pathetic. Such a poor picture of the EC was cut. Look, I'm being honest with you.
23,000, 17.
Look, he brought them on his own.
23,000.
Listen, it was pathetic.
It
was brought them on their own motion.
That it was an embarrassment, I agree, but pathetic, another matter.
You agree it was embarrassing.
Something pathetic.
All right, gentlemen,
17 among 23,000.
But it was pathetic.
Our electoral processes
17 in 23,000.
with these technical and administrative errors have been largely part of our electoral system. Indeed, in the 2000 elections that President Kufuor won, if you go back there, you will see non-sign of pink sheet.
Okay.
No, you see,
in 2004,
right? Almost all the judges address their minds to elections globally and whether they are perfect or imperfect
you have a
events.
situation where you have Amuzu here and Awuzu there. What do you think you'll be thinking of? Possible fraud.
Okay.
Don't make a mistake about that.
All right.
Possible fraud.
All right.
Was it fraud when the petitioners
gentlemen, let's
manual and electronic system?
Okay.
One petition is manual, one is electronic.
Okay, gentlemen, let's move on. Let me share a few of the thoughts of our listeners with you. Nana Kweku Adomako Nyakoto says that I think our country must go above mediocrity and try things right and according to the stipulated laws. Let's admit that the job of the EC, as per the evidence in court, was nothing to write home about. And Idrisu Al-Hassan writes, Nanado has been marketed properly and almost every living being now knows. Okay, that's the next issue we are getting to. And then John Agbozo writes something. I have little faith in the review of our voting structures and processes. Reform so-called, having a substantive effect on the integrity of our polls herefrom. I doubt that we lack the institutional capacity to conduct free and fair elections in Ghana. Our challenge really is the people that run the system. To what extent are these people capable of upholding the trust and the trust the people repose in them without addressing that human factor? It will amount to nothing. Okay, thanks for your views here on Newsfile. Now, let's move on to the next topic, and I want first Kokubako to start on this note. The question is that now Nanado is having too many people visit him. They are not allowing him the rest that he's asked for himself. And the question is, okay, he needs time, but the people are rushing on him. And now there's problem within his own party. It's leading to division. why should he not now state what he wants to do so that it will end the matter?
Well, I would draw an extension and deal with both subsequently. But the distinction is that those going to Nana's house to visit him and to issue those premature endorsements, I draw a distinction between that and the leaders of the executive who, out of their way, made statements to the effect that this is a virtually unopposed candidate for the party. I can see the dilemma that Akufo-Addo was confronted with as a leader of a political party post the verdict, all the grueling things that you went through. Normally, even by our tradition, you would expect that interaction, and especially to say, look, we fought a good fight, we lost honorably, that's it. The part about endorsement distorts the whole gathering. And I was getting to a stage I thought that Akufo-Addo himself ought to have put a stop to it. Fortunately, I'm told he's traveling. Maybe that's also part of it. If you're going to exit so soon after the verdict, there was a need for those interactions. The interactions would have been okay if it didn't come with that twist of endorsement. So I think that was not good enough in terms of, making sure that nothing that is potentially disruptive of internal party cohesion is given any legitimacy. It's very important, post-verdict, post-elections, and the fact that the party had declared a calendar of having elections from polling station to the national level. I think those gathering in his house, because of that twist, created a distortion, and he ought to have stopped it as quickly as possible. Whatever it is, those have happened. But you see, out of that whole thing, especially the executive, Sir John, the chairman, the Asante Regional chairman, and many other chairmen, is now things like death threats, police investigation. I'm told it's been withdrawn.
Yes, he's withdrawn it.
Yeah, but it created a bad publicity for the party. It undermined the party's image. And that's exactly the point I was making, that if leaders do not manage a process well, you can open. And I've been advised that perhaps my earlier criticism was too all-embracing, as if I was looking at the party leadership from A to Z and dealing with them. And then I think there's some point in that point. I was targeting particularly the General Secretary, and to some extent the party chairman and those other regional chairmen who did what they did. So really, I think it would be wrong even for Nana Addo to declare that yes, I'm interested. As astute as he is in terms of his politics, he said, I am taking time out to reflect and to come back with a position. That was the best thing to do. Any attempt to revise that and say that in view of all this popular support, I've decided that now I'm declaring ahead of time, that would be disruptive of the party calendar, the program, the focus. As a very disciplined political party, the focus is the calendar that the party leadership has announced. That's the focus. There is no basis for anybody, potential aspirant, to come out ahead of the pack now and ahead of the program to declare that I would be a candidate. What's the value? What are you trying to see? And you see, in an Akufo-Addo's case, he doesn't need it. His competitiveness is unassailable within the context of the party today. In terms, if he wants to run and it wants to be tested, why are you in a hurry? Why are you in a hurry to do something which I've been advised not to say again? So I won't say. You understand? Why? So to be honest with you, you
can say it's a premature move.
Yes, but the best thing is to add the other one. Why should we do that?
Okay.
So to be honest with you, I was surprised. And I'm being very honest with you.
And the latest associated development, do you believe in it? Do you believe that he was actually threatened?
It would be so unfair on my part to judge. I have been a victim before, a target of such things before. I have no basis to question it. But I'm saying that it was a fallout of that erratic management of the process by the General Secretary particularly, that created these conditions. That's what we were saying here, that it was potentially divisive and disruptive of internal party cohesion. And that it will create the basis for people to say all sorts of things against each other. Particularly, that's where this death threat came from. True or false, I am not judging.
I see. I've been looking for him to ask him a few questions, really. Abi, what do you say? Some say Nana should end all of this by, stating what exactly he wants to do.
Some of us have made a point when the election petition was in court that it is not actually an attempt to have the results overturned, but it's to make Nana Akufo-Addo
Maybe you want to go there again.
very relevant.
Speculative.
These are generated.
Pathetically speculative.
Immediately after the verdict, you heard calls coming from within the executives. His right-hand man, Sir John, supported by the chairman of the party, calling for him to be unopposed or calling for him to stand again. I have no doubt in my mind that Nana Akufo-Addo will stand in 2016. We'll come back here if you call me to discuss it. He will stand.
Yeah, but he hasn't said he wouldn't.
And I'm saying that these are
Has
all
he?
cosmetic. The man will stand. He will represent you people. As
Which people?
Okay, you will out.
Maybe you.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I'm sure about that. But you see, I am petrified and surprised at these calls that Nana should stand again. Because you see, when you look at what has happened to the MPP, this is a man who took them into opposition. This is a man who kept them in opposition. This is a man who initiated action in court and lost. But you see the way people are trooping to his place as if he has won some award somewhere. These are all catalogue of failures.
This is a man who took them to opposition. You don't believe in your work that
Professor Mills took NDC to opposition.
What?
You don't believe in your work that got
He's
you victory.
forgotten his history.
This is a man who took you to
That means
opposition.
that our work was able to subdue him. He was virtually in power. Nana Akufo-Addo was virtually the president when he was having motorcades before
Oh,
him.
come on. That's not true.
So, you see,
Where?
I am of the view that it appears, I don't know whether they have been hypnotized, but you, in some jurisdictions, you rather call for a fresh person to come in and undo what has been done against the MPP, where they find themselves in opposition now.
He got 5 million votes. Your candidate also got 5 million votes.
This constitution says 50 plus 1. It didn't say 6,000.
Prof. Mills lost 2 elections.
Won the first
You see,
round with
so
Professor Mills at
if you have such a
49%.
candidate and you still want to bring him, and indeed, the most bad aspect of it all is you have somebody who campaigned for 2 years, and it took somebody 3 months.
Is he dealing with the issue?
Yes, the issue is.
Are you dealing with
Are you
the issue?
uncomfortable?
No, because you are not dealing
I am
with it.
dealing
You are
with the issue of the
where
call
you are
for him to
going.
stand.
It's a bit. I'm
Why
sorry,
would- why would-
propagandist,
why
and it
would-
will distort
why
the
would
discussion.
So-
Why would the MPP want to shoot itself in the foot? But in any case, we
That's
are
not the
beneficiaries.
issue
Why is
here.
that- is
We
that
are the
your-
beneficiaries. Yes, I'm now coming home to our own party. We are the beneficiaries. And we think that it would be better to bring him. Now, if you bring him, what would we be doing? We will not sleep. We already have a dossier of him. If we were going to spend 12 hours working around him, we'll now use only 2 hours and go back to sleep. But the larger picture is that has he on his own, and I heard Gabi the last week saying that it may have an effect on his energy, whether at that age he'll be able to traverse crocodile-infested ponds, mountains, can he climb all those things? He must be the one to decide. But beyond that, we are waiting for whoever is coming, and we'll launch that person.
Mr. Ikotu.
Well, let me associate myself, first of all, with the views expressed by Kuku Baku, and to move on to say that what is happening is unconstitutional, and that those who are engaged in it perhaps must have to revise their notes.
You are in charge of the party's constitution committee.
We have not declared, we have not asked that people should start, come to take, nomination forms for that office. We've got to sit down and think about all issues, including getting a winnable candidate. I like to leave Ghanaians with some thoughts on Kerry and Obama. Obama was virtually unknown. Kerry, as candidate, gave him the platform to speak at their Congress. He became a household name instantly. They were targeting the black minority votes and the Hispanics. Kerry went through it. He didn't get the note. He waited. The next time round, he supported Obama to go. He didn't go anymore, but supported Obama. It did not appear as if he was losing touch. That is Kerry himself, but he was playing his cards. They realized that they also needed the white and the middle vote, the middle class vote. So they chose Clinton to assist Obama. After 4 years, Clinton had been dropped and Kerry is now back as the Secretary of State in America, a very powerful position. Atta Mills was weak, old, frail, could not take any decision. The man was dying.
Excuse me?
The results showed clearly that Nana Akufo-Addo would have won landslide if the Mills had been there. Fate, whatever, some have conspiracy theories. The man died. Then they saw the need to bring in a younger person. He started by saying that as for him, he was born in Ghana. He's a Ghanaian. He's a younger person. Immediately, you get a juxtaposition of an older person contesting with a younger person. It might have worked somehow for them. This is the advice I want to give. Let us look at all the issues at stake. You win executive power. You control the legislature. Leave the judiciary to be independent, and you'll be okay.
I didn't get that last bit.
Win executive power, control the legislature, and leave the judiciary to be independent. You will be okay.
You don't sound like you would endorse an Nana Addo candidature.
I'm not going to go into the details. I said I've spoken, I've drawn instances. I want people to start looking at it. Let us ensure that we win.
It's a very powerful example.
We win executive power.
And it goes to speak to a particular point.
We
on
win
the basis of which I am
power.
saying that you don't sound like you would endorse an
You are not putting any
Nana
words
Addo
into
candidature.
my mouth. I'm saying let us win executive power. Let us control the legislature so we ensure that all our plans are put into place. If we want free senior education, let us ensure that it will come to play. Leave the judiciary to be independent.
Okay. I'll take a quick break here. I'll return to hear from Mahama Yaraga. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM on radio and on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. Now, let's get straight into hear from Mahama Yaraga on the topic that we have been discussing now about Nana Addo and calls for him to do a third time.
First and foremost, let me, with all sincerity, register my displeasure at the way in which my very learned senior here spoke about Professor Mills and the mention of conspiracy theories and etc. I honestly feel saddened by that kind of comment. First and foremost, I know that the prof was ill. We all knew that he was ill, and there are many of us who are ill, even though we look okay. So being ill is not, in my opinion.
So he was stating the obvious.
But the way in which, it has been put, and I can assure you that even the day the late prof passed away, that morning he was in office. That morning he was in office to sign, off executive directives and correspondences and etc. Went back to his residence. and passed away. So his illness did not affect his capacity to deliver. That year, the country, the year before, the country had done so well economically, growing at about 14%, the fastest growth in the country. He undertook a tour of the country, and during his tour, we all visibly saw the radical expansion in terms of educational infrastructure across the country. The regional hospitals he had started building, healthcare delivery, the infrastructure that he was putting in place, the leadership that he had provided in terms of, after the discovery of oil, the establishment of the infrastructure for the management of our oil sector, and etc. Yes, he was ill, but he performed marvelously well in delivering on his responsibility as a president right till the morning of the day when he passed away. So I honestly take serious objection to the way in which my learned senior has put Couch's message. I also think that the allusion to conspiracy theories to suggest that somebody, worked to take away Professor Mills so that a younger candidate will come. I can assure you that Professor Mills would have won the election again. I can assure you that Professor Mills would have won the election again. There's no doubt about that, because he was going to win based on delivery. And so I object to any attempt to create an impression that anybody in NDC was involved in any conspiracy of taking Professor Mills out so that President Mahama, a younger candidate, would contest against Nana Akufo-Addo. I think that's most unfortunate. I am very reluctant to discuss Nana Akufo-Addo's candidature. It's not my responsibility. I think the most important thing that President John Dramani Mahama yesterday had a retreat with all his ministers, at which we looked at every facet of our mandate as a government, the social and economic program that we have for the people of Ghana, our plans to expand the infrastructure, to create jobs. Especially yesterday's session was focusing on jobs, how to improve upon the delivery of public services, how to improve upon accountability to the ordinary people of this country, and how to expand agriculture, how to make sure that we import less, and if possible, start exporting a lot of agricultural commodities and all that. And we closed very late, around 10, 11. We're still at the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center. And so we are staying focused and on course. And I believe that once we work at it and deliver on the promises that we made to the people in 2012 during the campaign, it will not matter who the MPP will present. Is that okay? It won't matter who the MPP will present unless that person also shows an ability to deliver even better than we are, because that's what Ghanaians are looking for. Right. They are not looking for a particular name. They are not looking for a particular age bracket. I'm looking for a particular age bracket or anything of that sort. Is that okay? They are looking for a president who is delivering, and John Dramani Mahama will deliver. Indeed, I can assure you that the last 8 months has been very trying, largely because of this distraction that has taken place.
He's suggesting to you, he's hinting you that if you wanted to go this direction, there could be an argument on that level as well. Of course.
Oh no, there's no doubt about that. We are looking at the candidature of Nana Akufo-Addo.
That is so.
Candidature with who? NDC, it's clear that John Dramani Mahama will be our candidate.
The endorsements.
John Dramani Mahama will be our candidate, God willing. Is that okay? Inshallah, John Dramani Mahama will be our candidate.
The endorsements.
The issue is who will emerge on the MPP side to face President John Dramani Mahama.
Is that the issue we are discussing?
And I'm telling them that instead of focusing on the personalities, they should rather look at the delivery of John Dramani Mahama, and that should tell them who they should put up, because Ghanaians are looking for a president who is delivering, and President Mahama will deliver. He's been working on it, and he will deliver. Once he delivers, that will define their candidate.
I see.
That will define their candidate and the issues of their candidate.
Okay.
For me, that's and I'm telling them because I have been very close to presidential aspirants before.
I see.
And I can tell them what I think defines the strategy of a political party.
All right, all right.
You are not being fair to us. No, I'm not uncomfortable. But he's not dealing with the issue.
You have an issue. And I'm choosing to tackle it from a different perspective.
Right.
Essentially, it's about the candidates in 2016. Is that not it? It's about who should be the candidates in 2016.
We are talking about those who are...
That's your interpretation of
but
it.
that's wrong interpretation.
No, but
the subject we are interrogating is Nanado being
mischief,
endorsed
that's all.
by his people for a third attempt. Now, let me tell you about Valex lease equipment. You've heard a lot about them already, but what is important is that you may be underestimating what Valex lease equipment can do for you. Just call them 0540-482-857, 0540-482-857, or 0540-482-883. And they would come to you, provide you with a multi-functional molding equipment which can print, copy, and scan at the same time. There's no fixed rental charge. You only pay as you copy or print, and scanning is absolutely free. You can scan directly to email and open with pen drive for free, copy and print wireless to the same equipment. And the good thing about all of it is that the toners, cartridges, and repairs and maintenance are supplied free of charge. Visit them at valexv@yahoo.co.uk or call the numbers that I supplied you and you will be surprised. Valex Lease Equipment is your affordable document management solutions. And as always, Latida. Latida, you ought to be on top of the fashion world with the latest in Latida's men's and ladies' designs in African print and linen dresses. Looking good and sharp is what they pride themselves in. There are 2013 designs of men's shirt and ladies' dresses in African print are out and are selling fast. Be in vogue. Don't be left out in the latest men's and ladies' outfits. Affordability is their hallmark. Contact Latida on 026 56 50 918 or 020 433 6444 for orders and delivery. Latida is asking you to be in vogue because that is their hallmark, and they'll give you the very best in cheap prices. Now, capture all those memorable moments during this Hajj season with MTN's roaming. With up to 60% discount, you can share all those spiritual moments with your family and friends. So go on, browse the internet, SMS, and call home without worrying about high roaming charges. Travel in comfort with MTN number and enjoy unbeatable roaming discounts in Saudi Arabia on Mobily. Call 786. The number is 786, and follow the prompts to success. To access the Holy Quran. No sins occurred, but a mere error. Else there were also irregularities in their suit. Finding errors in an opponent's stronghold is not a case. Afarijan is an honorable man. This one says, Samson, the NPP should be real and honest with the times that a choice for Nanado for 2016 is another electoral defeat. Not that Nanado is a bad person, but as a political commodity, Nanado will not be bought by Ghanaians. A fresh person should be the one to be considered. Chakite, right from Somenia. Why is Mr. Amaliba so cynical? Nana would be the most formidable candidate challenging President Mahama in 2016. Why is Mr. Amaliba worried about NPP bringing Nana? Clement Opoku Jemfi writes this. He's TESCOM president at GIMPA. He says something, please, let's get one thing clear, that the NPP is the farthest of democracy as far as Ghana's politics is concerned. So there should be no cause for alarm when people begin to share or express their views. That is what democracy is all about. Ordinarily, members can voice out openly and it won't carry any weight. Okay, but for a national executive to openly make such statements is below the belt. Thank you very much for those messages.
Before we move on to the new topic, it seems to me that I have to react quickly to my brother's comments about me in respect of what I said about President Mills. I think that we all have opinions and we are entitled to those opinions. The conspiracy theories were not started by me. Even Professor Atamil's son was alleged to have made certain comments to the extent that we got to where we had to bring in a former, is it the CPP doctor or professor? Akosa to say that these were private matters and we don't need to publish his, post-mortem report or what might have killed him. So he knows the problems that I'm talking about. And he should not create the impression that anybody is trying to, if you like, run him down. We are saying that strategically something might have happened and it helped the situation. That is my view. Please, that is my view of the matter. If he has his view, I don't want it to be turned into
when you made that comment, I stopped and asked you, excuse me?
Yes, your view of the matter.
That is my view. That is my view.
It includes the integrity of a whole political party.
I never said so.
No, if you said that a natural occurrence. Is that the case? If you say a natural occurrence.
A natural occurrence when faith intervened and the man died. Yet there were even conspiracy theories. That is the point I made.
Okay, you did not elaborate.
That was the point I made.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, can we talk about where supposedly Ghana's 3.5 million US dollars can't be found? We are told, according to people who appeared before the sole commissioner on judgment debts, questionable judgment debts, I must say, that they can't find documents regarding the sale of Ghana's drill ship. Sometime, was it in 2001? It's supposed to have been sold on the 17th of July. Well, that was in the NPP administration. Now, we are being told that Chachuchi Kata ought to be blamed for all of that happened because he created all the debts. And at the time, reviving GMPC was so difficult that you couldn't do it without selling off that ship. Well, that ship was sold off for how much? $24 million plus. And then some debt were paid to Societe Generale who were owed by GMPC. But we're told that documents regarding that transaction cannot be found. Katie Hammond says, no, the documents are there. I'd like to start with Abraham on that issue.
Yeah.
You've been following it. What do you say about the developments?
The judgment that commissioners hearing has revealed a number of things. Some have to do with poor record keeping, which has come to the fore. Some have to do with lack of memory of where documents are. But this has to do with a major state institution, that's the GMPC. When the matter came up, I think Katie Amon owned up to say that, look, I was the one who went and sold the ship, and that I paid some judgment debts with the money. The remainder, I brought them in traveler's check, or what check is it, back to Osafo Mafo, and that
To the finance ministry.
to the finance. No, Osafo Mafo was then, and so, but from the proceedings at the Judgment Debt Commissioners system, you cannot find traces of those documents in the Ghana Bank of Ghana. So one will want to ask, where did the money go? And if we are to believe the story that it was sold to pay off judgment debts or debt owed by that state institution, Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, and that it was caused by Chachi Shikata, is that the solution to the problem? If your father has left you with debts and left you with a house, do you sell the house to pay off the debt? So state institutions, and I'm not surprised, because during the Kufuor administration, there were a number of state institutions that were sold, even lands. So it was as if we were in a spree, selling state institutions on a spree. We're on a spree. You get the point. So
I suppose you can get the hint that when it comes to sale of state assets, they are getting ready to give you a list.
They sold more.
No.
They sold
My
more.
issue is that we now have an issue before us that can be traceable to a particular regime.
That's correct.
If they want, they can go back. But this is a fact. Now,
So you could have dealt with the fact
no.
alone.
Kukubako,
Yes, please.
I would prefer that you don't structure my
I'm sorry.
submission.
Forgive me, I'm sorry.
Assisting you.
No, I don't need it.
Sorry.
So you see, this sale, why? Chachikata was prosecuted for how much? Just 20 million Ghana cedis, old Ghana cedis, now what, how much? About Valley Farms. If Chachu had caused this judgment debt, the MPP government, would they have left him to go scot-free? So it calls into question the explanation given by K.T. Amon that Chachu caused it, and for that matter, they had to sell to pay off the debt. Now, you've sold the ship, you've paid off the debt. Where is our balance as a state? So sometimes when you see the MPP mount the moral high ground and talk about corruption, you see, I always tell them that when one is pointing a finger at you, the rest of the four point at them. I think that we need not to let this matter die as we usually do. Luckily for us, K.T. Amon is around. Luckily for us, he has mentioned names. He's made a point that he's given the balance to the finance minister or the finance ministry, who was then
was paid to the finance ministry.
So who was then the minister? Let's find out. Let's drag all of them to the Judgment Debt Commissioner. Who was then the governor of Bank of Ghana? Let's find out what has happened. So let's trace and get all these people online to tell us what happened to that man. But you see, the most serious thing is that you sell a property belonging to a state institution, and the state institution doesn't know. Because you say you were selling to defray a judgment debt created by that institution. The institution doesn't know that you've sold that ship. This creates more problems, and we need answers to this question. We shouldn't let it go.
Let me hear from Abdul Malik on this.
You know, sometimes it's so tempting to do a recall. I wanted to focus on just the facts.
I think you can do that.
No, but it's
And that's what you ought to be doing, really.
Yes, but because he's
react.
distorted, he's created a certain distortion, and it's not good for our viewers and listeners. Judgment debt. Now who caused them? Somebody's caused financial loss. Now who caused them? If we proceeded from that premise, I believe my brother is aware that there was a litigation in the UK court before the assumption of office of the Kufuor administration. And the litigation had to do with Société Générale versus GNPC. I'm sure he knows that. And I'm sure he knows that the vessel, the ship, was also arrested, so to say, on the orders of the UK court. And I'm sure he knows that before the Kufuor administration came into office, that vessel had been used as a certain form of collateral in the transaction between Societe Generale and GNPC. And indeed, enough documentation exists to show that the GNPC had been planning to sell the vehicle, the vessel. Okay? And indeed, I have a lot of the documents here.
The Judgment Commissioner doesn't have.
I'm surprised.
He's looking for them.
So
if you can send them tomorrow or Monday.
I'll be surprised if they don't have this.
He's looking
These
for them.
ones that I have here. That shows clearly between the GNPC and Credit Suisse and Societe Generale. Let me read this to you.
And what are you reading?
This is, you can see it. It's here.
I like the cameras to zoom in on it.
Yeah, it's here. As you understand the above monies owed by Ghana National Petroleum Corporation to Credit Suisse, it is considered to be significant. It is considered to be a significant sum, and delay in its repayment a serious matter. As Mr. Rogers had stressed in previous discussions with you, we have requested that you keep us regularly informed on a weekly basis as to the progress of the sale of Discover 1511, since this was intended to be the means of repayment for the monies owed to Credit Suisse. The Societe Generale also is here. The same.
Okay, so you just read a letter from who? At what point?
From, this is signed by Steve Simoni, Director, Credit Risk Management, Miss Malaria Richmond, Director, Head of Legal Department, then G. David Rogers, Director. This, and I have the Societe Generale ones to here. If it's time for me, I can go through
and
all
I'm saying
that.
This is coming from
Credit Suisse.
Credit Suisse.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
this is Societe Generale. Listen,
Okay.
as at the time of writing, we wish to advise you that, as you have stated, the proposed sale of D511 rig will be concluded within 48 hours from today's date, and that the GNPC will be in a position to confirm such matters by not later than 23rd January 1998. This is signed by J. Paul Holia, Societe Generale. And I have Mr. Chikate's own letters here itemizing how much they will pay on each time. We owe them. It had ballooned to 47 million US dollars. But listen to how we came by this. And that's what I said. I didn't want to be tempted to go in that direction. Listen, what was it? The hedging. We had gone into the hedging. Listen to, this is a letter from, this is to Chairman of and GNPC Board of Directors from Chief Executive, date 15 December 1998. And listen, in the course of discussions with them, that is Societe Generale, the issue of establishing a framework for protecting the projected revenues from the anticipated oil and gas production from tunnel fields was a key concern. Resulting from these discussions, agreement was reached in September 1996 for commencing a series of transactions whereby GNPC will obtain price protection for the future production from tunnel fields. Now listen to this carefully. These transactions began in October 1996. The purchase by GNPC of put options to provide a minimum price for future production from the tunnel oil fields. The strip of put options covered a period from 1998, when production start-up was anticipated, to 2012. We were doing hedging based on something that did not exist, on anticipated oil and gas discovery.
Okay, so let's fast forward.
So
we had incurred the debt.
He made me go there.
Right.
I wouldn't have gone there. But in order for our people to get clarity, that's why I went there.
We had incurred that, sold the vessel.
So the ship was no longer in our custody.
Right.
Indeed, it had become an object of court control. And in any case, as I have proved, GNPC itself had made it clear that they would sell that ship as a means of payment. So now when that had happened, the ship indeed was arrested. We paid. There was an escrow account. The money was put in the escrow account. I can't see why anybody cannot trace that escrow account. We paid 19.5 million. You know that, to
Societe
Generale. What I think is in point now is the balance. See, before the GMPC handed over, the board, Kufuor's administration, this is GMPC's handing over notes.
We're very limited time, so you could...
January 15,
yes.
2009. It is stated in it, disposal of marine assets. They indicate that the thing was sold for 24 million. This was handed over to the NDC's transition team. I would have expected that from that period, this document would have been subjected to some form of auditing and due diligence. And for that matter, would have traced what has happened at the Judgment Debt Commission. It's too early for anybody to judge. So many people ought to be called. So many documents ought to be traced. You would find out, and I put this on record, nobody chopped any money. No money is missing.
Mr. Erga,
Well, I mean,
many questions are coming up here.
yeah, I mean, the issue has been discussed. I think the critical question that we're asking ourselves here is there any malfeasance, or is it just the usual, which is not right? I mean, challenges with documentation and preserving documentation.
Perennial.
I think those are the key issues. But because of this, a lot of issues have arisen, and it's important that we communicate properly on those issues. I think there's been mention severally of Chachu Chikate's name, and I think it's important for us to understand the context in which the debt arose, because he was forced to go there because of what he raised. But the truth of the matter is that it is a normal feature of the industry that you engage in hedging and derivatives as
in this case,
a mechanism.
Anticipated oil.
On
discovered oil in 2007.
mechanisms for raising funds for projects. And in this case, Chachu was approached by Societe Generale offering services to assist raise funds in anticipation that there will be discoveries, and then we'll pay off.
Koku is saying that was such a poor exercise of judgment.
Well, the point is this. The point is this, that he admitted that he was not an expert in the matter, that Societe Generale presented themselves to GMPC as experts in that area, and they will be providing GMPC with advice and technical support.
On
There was agreement that as part of this process, there will be capacity building for GMPC in the area of derivatives and etc. And so they offered to assist and work with him in this area. I mean, they raised the funds, there were challenges, and subsequently losses incurred, and that led to the debt that we are discussing. And yeah, of course, litigation in court. What is still surprising is the fact that I have been trying to follow what really is the process. Was it the court that ordered the sale of the vessel? It was the court. It was the court. It was the court that ordered the sale of the vessel.
We had agreed that that would be the means of payment, even before Kufuor's administration. And I've read the letters to you.
He speaks about it as a collateral.
The point I'm making is this. I listened to K.T. Hammond. Is that okay? And K.T. Hammond explained. And in his explanation, he said he went to, is it the UK, and went and sold the vehicle. I mean, the vessel.
That's what he said.
No, that's what he said. No. He said he went there and went and sold the vessel. No, I'm not taking advantage. Listen, see, these are primary witnesses. He said that he went to the UK, went and sold the vessel. No, I'm listening. So,
and he spoke about it. He spoke about it at the time as even not being an asset to the state.
He said
not the state's property.
Excuse me. He said he went and sold the vessel. And I was asking myself, I mean, was it the court that sold? Oh, this is not mischief.
Okay.
I mean, everybody heard him.
Okay. We are running out of time. I need to hear.
Everybody heard him. You heard him, isn't it?
Yes.
He said he went and sold it, and that he held the check and came. And he has a photocopy of the check. So I listened to him. He said, okay.
And I'm not doubting what you're saying, but you're interpreting it to mean something else.
No, I'm not.
Plain mischief.
No. You see, the point is this, that there are some institutional issues there that we need to interrogate. Because I thought that maybe the court that ordered the sale. But the man said he went and sold it and then paid part of the money and brought the other part back to Accra.
The litigation was there.
There are questions that in such a transaction involving an asset of the state, it couldn't have been done on the blind side of the Bank of Ghana. And also the talk about putting the money into an escrow account and everything else was wrong in the first place.
Well, there was negotiations, if I do recall, to bring down the 47 to about 19 million.
That is
so. These were, I believe, the parts that were played by some of our guys. Because if the debt was 40-something million and you could go and negotiate and bring it down, and then from there you see to it that the thing is sold, and then you liquidate your debts. I don't think there's anything wrong. My position is this: we are talking about accountability, probity and accountability. It's only fair that all those who were involved should be able to come and give us the account. But for Amaliba's, penchant for doing politics, I mean, straight away, he created the impression that we went and just incurred debt, when in fact the thing took place before 2000. And the documents are there, you could have checked. You understand? That is why Kweku Baako had to go there. And I agree perfectly with everything that as far as I'm concerned, we are talking about accountability and probity. Let those who have to account come and account. In fact, Ekete Amon has said that he is ready to appear before the commission. That is what we have read.
And once again, revealing of what Kweku Baako continues to say, symptomatic of the ineptitude in the public office or so. Is that what it is? That he has the documents that the ministries don't have, and the Judgment Debt Commission cannot have it.
Well,
but they say it's not available.
They should check properly.
You see, we should start.
The way some of these documents get to some people, the officials don't have it. It's a problem.
We should start using delegations, what we call, a consortium. Bring people together to work on some of these things. Katie Amon may be a lawyer, but he's not from the agency department. The energy people, the GMPC people, the Ministry of Finance, those who are involved.
Katie Amon has a document.
So there should be...
Should he volunteer? Go to the commission and submit them?
Yes, that is what he said he would do. But I'm saying that we need delegations to fight this thing. I was in Telecom Malaysia. I led that team. And for every small area, they had a whole team.
Right.
Some people coming to talk about it, experts,
Okay.
to deal with the matter.
Right.
So if we create the
UK court documentation.
Okay.
Exactly,
Thank you.
it's all there.
These things are there. There's nothing mysterious about any of these things.
Okay, thank you
the
very
money
much.
is in the Bank of Ghana.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
We'll go and search.
This particular show, there's a repeat broadcast of this show. Gentlemen, there's a repeat broadcast of this show at 9:30 tonight on this same channel. Thank you very much for tuning in and for listening into the show. My guests have been Mahama Yarga. He is the information minister and he's a lawyer. Kweku Baako Jr. is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, regular panelist. Ni Ayikwe Otu, former attorney general. He's also a lawyer. And Abraham Amalaba, he is a lawyer with the NDC's legal team. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. The show was produced under the leadership of Sedem Ofori with the assistance from Emmanuel Ante. Thank you very much, guys. All of you working the TV. Yaya, thank you very much. Now, have a good afternoon. The news is up next.